Hello and welcome to our podcast episode number 59. A vampire hunt like no other. Infiltrate, rescue, and survive. I'm Thomas, and I am here with my old friend Timothy. Tonight, we are going to discuss a film called Brotherhood of Blood. Brotherhood of Blood is a 2007 American-German horror film about a team of vampire hunters who infiltrate a nest to rescue one of their own, Carrie Rieger. They face off against the mighty vampire King Pashek, and an even greater threat, a transformed man who becomes the powerful vampire demon Vlad Kosei. The film revolves around themes of revenge, betrayal, and the struggle between good and evil. To start with, I liked the film. But Tim, did you like Brotherhood of Blood?
Well, Tom, I must say that I found it passable. The story had some interesting elements, but overall it didn't really grip me like I hoped it would. There were parts where the pacing felt a bit off, and some of the characters weren't as well developed as they could have been. However, the special effects were decent enough for a horror film. And there were a few tense moments that kept me engaged.
I see. And you know, Tim, I generally don't like horror films all that much, but this one wasn't too bad. Sure, it had its flaws, but the premise was intriguing enough to keep me watching until the end. The vampire lore was pretty interesting, and I liked how they incorporated some historical elements into the story. Plus, the setting itself was quite atmospheric. I could really feel the claustrophobia of being trapped in a dark cellar or chased through dank catacombs.
Cutting Tom off mid-sentence. Well, Thomas, I must admit that it's refreshing to hear you say something positive about a horror film for once. But let me get this straight. You didn't like the characters much. They seem pretty one-dimensional to me, too, especially the Vampire King and his minions. The protagonist, Carrie, was somewhat engaging, but she wasn't exactly breaking new ground in terms of character development.
All right, Tim, you made your point. I agree that some characters could have been fleshed out more, but at least they managed to capture the essence of what a horror film should be: suspenseful and eerie. Now let's talk about the actors for a moment. What did you think about Jason Connery as Alec? And how about Victoria Pratt as Carrie?
Well, Tom, I think Jason Connery did an adequate job as Alec, but he wasn't really given much to work with in terms of character development. His role was more or less that of a stoic leader who guides the team through various challenges. Victoria Pratt's portrayal of Carrie was somewhat better. She managed to convey the necessary mix of vulnerability and strength required for her character. However, I wish they had explored their past relationship further, because it seemed like an interesting dynamic that could have added depth to the story.
You might be right about that. It seems like there was a lot left unsaid between Alex and Carrie. But let's talk about the antagonists for a moment. Pashek, the Vampire King, and Vlad Kosei, the vampire demon. What did you think of their performances?
I thought both actors delivered solid performances as the villains. Pashek exuded an air of menace and cruelty typical of vampire lore, while also displaying a cunning intelligence that made him formidable opponent. As for Vlad Kosei, he was quite intimidating in his transformed state, towering over everyone else and emanating raw power. The actor did a good job conveying the character's rage and hunger for revenge.
Yes, I agree with you there, Tim. They were certainly memorable villains. Now let's talk about some of the other aspects of Brotherhood of Blood: the visuals, soundtrack, and overall atmosphere. What did you think of those?
The visuals were quite good. I especially liked the dark, moody lighting that helped create an eerie atmosphere throughout the film. The makeup effects for the vampires were also well done. They looked suitably monstrous, yet still maintained a certain level of elegance typical of vampire mythology. As for the soundtrack, it wasn't particularly memorable, but it did its job in terms of building tension and enhancing suspense during key scenes.
That sounds about right to me. Overall, I think Brotherhood of Blood was an enjoyable horror film with some interesting elements and strong performances from the actors involved. While it wasn't perfect by any means, I think it delivered enough thrills and chills to entertain viewers who appreciate this genre.
Exactly, Tom. Now let's discuss some interesting trivia about Brotherhood of Blood. Did you know that this film was actually a remake of another horror movie called Thirst of the Vampire, which was released in 1974? However, the producers decided to give it an updated setting and changed the story somewhat to make it more appealing for modern audiences. Additionally, some scenes from Brotherhood of Blood were filmed at the same locations where The Omen was shot. That's pretty cool. Right?
That is indeed interesting trivia, Tim. I didn't know about any of that. It just goes to show how movies can be influenced and reimagined over time. And yes, shooting at the same locations as The Omen adds an extra layer of nostalgia and significance to Brotherhood of Blood. Now, moving on from trivia, what did you think about the pacing of the film? I felt like it could have been a bit faster paced in some scenes, but overall it didn't detract too much from my enjoyment of the story. What are your thoughts on that aspect?
You know, Tom, I actually agree with you on the pacing. There were some moments where it felt like things were dragging a bit and could have benefited from being sped up just slightly. However, I think this is quite common in horror films, as directors often try to build tension by slowing down the action instead of relying solely on jump scares or other cheap thrills. Overall, I didn't love the pacing. It didn't ruin my experience with Brotherhood of Blood either.
Well, said Tim, I think we can both agree that Brotherhood of Blood had its strengths and weaknesses, but still managed to entertain us throughout its runtime. With an interesting premise and some solid performances from the cast, it was definitely worth watching for fans of the horror genre. So what's your final verdict on Brotherhood of Blood?
After carefully considering all aspects of the film, I would give it a rating of 6 out of 10 stars. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it had enough going for it to make it an enjoyable watch overall. What about you, Tom? How would you rate this one?
As someone who doesn't generally enjoy horror films as much as you do, I found Brotherhood of Blood to be surprisingly engaging and entertaining. Taking that into account, along with all the other elements discussed in our podcast tonight, I would give it a rating of 5 out of 10 stars. So there you have it, folks, another interesting film discussion between Tom and Tim. Agreed, Tim. Now let's shift our focus towards the direction of Brotherhood of Blood. What did you think about how the director Peter Shearer and Michael Roche handled the film? Were they able to create a cohesive narrative that kept you invested in the story?
Well, Tom, I thought they did an all right job with directing Brotherhood of Blood. They certainly captured the mood and atmosphere that one would expect from a horror film set in an underground vampire nest. However, there were some moments where I felt like the pacing could have been better managed. For instance, there were scenes that dragged on for what seemed like an eternity, while others flew by in just a few seconds. But overall, I think they did a decent job, given the limitations of the budget and resources available to them.
That's a fair assessment, Tim. It is true that low-budget horror films can often struggle with pacing due to constraints on production values or special effects. What about the performances by the actors? Did you think they were able to bring their characters to life effectively despite these challenges?
Precisely, Tom. As I mentioned earlier, both Jason Connery and Victoria Pratt gave commendable performances as Alex and Carrie, respectively. They managed to convey emotion and depth, even when faced with limited screen time or dialogue. The same could be said for the other actors involved in the film. They all did a decent job given their roles and the circumstances surrounding production.
It's great that you mentioned the performances, Tim. As we both know, having strong actors is crucial for any movie, but especially so in horror films where the characters often face intense situations and emotions. So what would you say was your favorite aspect of Brotherhood of Blood? Was it the acting, the special effects, or something else entirely?
Well, I enjoyed several aspects of the film, such as the makeup, effects, and some of the tense moments between characters. My favorite part was actually the setting. The underground vampire nest provided an eerie and claustrophobic atmosphere that really added to the overall feel of the movie. It made me feel like I was right there with the characters experiencing their terrifying ordeal firsthand.
That's interesting, Tim. I actually agree with you on that point. The setting did play a huge role in creating an immersive experience for viewers like us who are fans of horror films. So what would you say was your least favorite aspect about Brotherhood of Blood? Was there anything specific that stood out as particularly disappointing or underwhelming to you?
Well, Tom, while I didn't necessarily dislike any particular aspect of the film, if I had to choose one area for improvement, it would have been the pacing. As I mentioned earlier, some scenes felt a bit too drawn out, while others were over before they even began. If they could have found a better balance between these two extremes, I think the movie would have benefited greatly from a more consistent pace throughout its runtime.
That's definitely something to consider, Tim. Consistency in pacing can make or break a film, especially in the horror genre, where it's important to maintain tension and suspense throughout. So with all that said, what would your final verdict be on Brotherhood of Blood? Would you recommend this movie to others who share our love for all things scary and thrilling?
After considering the strengths and weaknesses discussed during our podcast tonight, I would give Brotherhood of Blood a rating of 6 out of 10 stars. While it wasn't perfect by any means, I think fans of horror films will find enough enjoyment in its suspenseful storyline and solid performances from the cast to make it worth their time. As for recommending this movie to others who share our love for horror movies like this one, precisely, Tom, despite its flaws, Brotherhood of Blood offers an engaging experience that's sure to leave viewers entertained from start to finish.
Well, Tim, it's clear that we both have our opinions on Brotherhood of Blood. Despite its flaws, I think this film offers enough thrills and chills for horror fans like us to enjoy. So, before we wrap up tonight's discussion, let's talk about something else, the actors and their characters.
Indeed, Jason Connery, did a great job portraying Alex, the stoic leader who guides his team through various challenges. His character is quite complex. He has to balance being a loyal friend while also making tough decisions for the greater good. I think Victoria Pratt's performance as Carrie was equally impressive. She managed to convey vulnerability and strength, which were essential traits for her character.
I completely agree with you, Tim. Both actors did an excellent job bringing their characters to life on screen. However, one thing that stood out to me was the lack of development for some of the supporting characters like Dr. Kozlov or Father Johannes. They had potential to be more than just background players, but unfortunately didn't get much screen time or dialogue to explore their roles further.
That's true, Tom. They could have delved deeper into those characters' backstories and motivations. But let's not forget that this is a horror film after all. The focus tends to be on the main protagonists and antagonists rather than secondary characters. Speaking of which, what did you think about Pashek, the Vampire King, played by Thomas Kretschmann?
Oh, he was fantastic. I've always been a fan of his work, and he didn't disappoint here either. His portrayal of Pashek was truly menacing. You could feel raw power and cruelty emanating from him every time he was on screen. It's no wonder that Victoria Pratt's character had such an intense fear of him throughout the film.
Yes, Tom Kretschmann definitely nailed his role as Pashek. He managed to convey both the intelligence and brutality necessary for a compelling villain like this one. And let's not forget about Vlad Kosei, played by Ken Foree. He was equally terrifying in his transformed state. The makeup effects for both characters were truly outstanding.
Indeed, Tim. Both actors did an amazing job bringing their characters to life on screen. I think it's safe to say that Brotherhood of Blood had a strong cast who delivered some memorable performances despite its flaws in other aspects. So with this being said, what do you think would have made this film even better? Any specific changes or additions you would suggest?
Well, Tom, I think one aspect where Brotherhood of Blood could have been improved was in its storytelling. The plot seemed a bit predictable at times, and some elements like the backstories for Dr. Kozlov or Father Johannes felt underdeveloped. If they had delved deeper into these characters' motivations and past experiences, it would have added an extra layer of depth to the narrative. Additionally, while I enjoyed the setting of the film, there were moments when I wish we could see more of the Vampire Society beyond their underground lair. Expanding upon their culture and traditions could have made them feel more fully realized as antagonists.
That's a great point, Ty. The cultural aspect of Brotherhood of Blood is actually quite fascinating when you think about it. In many ways, this film serves as an allegory for societies that value secrecy and hierarchy above all else. It explores themes such as power dynamics, trust, and betrayal in a group that has been isolated from mainstream society for centuries. By delving deeper into these themes through character development or additional plot lines, the film could have become more than just another horror flick. It could have been a gripping commentary on contemporary issues as well.
Exactly, Tom. I think this is where Brotherhood of Blood shows its potential as a cult classic. Its engaging characters and intriguing premise make it a compelling watch for fans of horror films who are also interested in exploring deeper themes within the genre. By expanding upon these aspects, future installments or even spin-offs could build upon this foundation to create an even more immersive universe filled with complex characters and thrilling storylines.
Truly, Tim, as film enthusiasts, it's always exciting to see the possibilities that exist within a given movie franchise. Whether it be through further exploration of existing themes or introducing new elements into the mix, there are countless ways in which Brotherhood of Blood could grow and evolve over time. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get that spin-off series starring Pashek or Vlad Kosei that delves deeper into their backstories and motivations.
I think that would be quite fascinating, Tom. To see more of the Vampire Society from their perspective could provide some interesting insights into what makes them tick as characters. It might also help humanize them in some ways, which could make for a more compelling narrative overall. Only time will tell if we'll ever get to see such spin-offs or sequels, but for now, I think it's safe to say that Brotherhood of Blood has left its mark on the horror genre and will continue to be discussed by fans for years to come.
Indeed, Tim. It's always fascinating to see how different people perceive and interpret certain aspects of a film. While we both enjoyed Brotherhood of Blood for its strengths, there's no denying that it has room for improvement. But isn't that what makes this industry so exciting? The constant push for innovation and growth within established genres like horror?
Absolutely, Tom. It's the very nature of storytelling to evolve over time. And I think Brotherhood of Blood is a testament to that. While it may not have been perfect in every aspect, it still managed to deliver an engaging experience for fans of horror films. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see a sequel or spin-off that expands upon the themes and characters we've grown to love or hate over the course of this film.
That would certainly be something to look forward to. In any case, thank you all for joining us on this thrilling discussion about Brotherhood of Blood. We hope you enjoyed listening in on our thoughts and opinions about this movie as much as we enjoyed sharing them with you. If you have your own thoughts or theories about the film, feel free to leave a comment below or join us on social media where you can continue the conversation with other fans of horror cinema.
Before we wrap things up for today, let me just add one more thing. As fellow lovers of all things creepy and suspenseful, we truly appreciate your support in watching, liking, and sharing our videos. It means the world to us, so if you haven't already done so, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel for more exciting discussions about movies, TV shows, and everything in between.
We can't wait to chat with you again soon.
And remember, folks, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment below telling us what you think. Your feedback helps us create even better content for your viewing pleasure. Until next time, happy haunting.